The reason I wanted to do this video blog is because I would really like to share with my friends my perspective on a number of contemporary topics that I think relate to the challenge that we will face in going forward together. Many of the people whom I am still, share my life, who I still share my life with, are people who grew up in the 60s, who experienced a profound change in culture that sort of can be noted as from going from Glenn Miller and Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby to Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and the Beatles. And it can also be noted as having changed from segregation to civil rights to a completely new and progressive concern for the welfare of all human beings in the United States. And, we have shared many long conversations about the right thing to do and the right way to be concerned about people and to express that concern. And I'd like to carry on that discussion to some degree over the course of my life. As the United States, which is the wealthiest country in the history of the world in its wealthiest moment, has gone from a country which I think was actually profoundly influenced by Eleanor Roosevelt and who profoundly influenced her husband, who I don't think was nearly as interested in the rights of the human rights of people, whether they were workers, because one of the big issues prior to World War II was labor rights. Corporate owners were paying people nothing, not a living wage, to work in dangerous environments where they could be severely injured without any health care support or even killed with no recourse for their families and no way for those families to actually continue to stay together. And probably everyone my age knows somebody who grew up in a home other than a nuclear family because a grandparent was injured or a parent was injured in an industrial accident in a factory which had no oversight as to the safety of the place or the welfare of its workers. So, so much change, positive change, happened in America in the late 40s, in the 50s, and the 60s, even through the 70s until 1980, when Ronald Reagan came along and started reversing all of those positive activities, and and to today, from 1980 to today, where the situation in the United States is one relative to workers' rights and the civil rights, especially of minorities in the United States. The situation is shocking and frightening. And I would say intolerable, except that it seems like most of the people in the United States seem to be willing to tolerate it. One of the reasons people are willing to tolerate it is because today, over 95% of the media in the United States are owned by 5 corporations. And the corporate media does not really allow for any kind of intelligent discussion of alternative concerns or alternatives that are not in the best interest of the management of those corporations. Management within corporations today is paid more than any time in history. And it's really surprising to me also that stockholders allow management to be paid so much money and, and are unconcerned about the benefits that their stock ownership should pass to them. In any case, all these contemporary events, the rise of extreme inequality in terms of economic resource distribution, the reassertion in the most extraordinarily violent ways possible of racism, institutional racism in the United States. The whole discussion of immigration and the threat to, separate families, deporting parents or deporting children, separating families in the United States is, first of all, for a bunch of people who are howling that the United States ought to be a Christian country, it is shockingly unchristian. Secondly, this circumstance is a threat to our continued existence as a nation, and certainly a threat to the welfare of all the people who live in the United States. So, because the corporate media is not going to allow for any kind of alternative discussion, there are plenty of other people who are doing alternative discussions, but not so many people are doing any alternative discussion that looks to the future and hopefully discusses, how we might do it better and what, our possibilities are and where we might need to be going in the face of all the challenging circumstances that are in front of us. For instance, this week there was a climate conference in South America. And today they announced that they signed a climate change deal, that countries are going to now start to change their behavior. Of course, the deal that they signed is wholly inadequate to the circumstance that we face. And in fact, there was a wonderful episode a few weeks ago in a TV show on HBO called Newsroom, where the anchorman is interviewing an EPA official, and the anchorman asks the guy, what is the carbon equivalent of saving the Earth, from climate change, from what the EPA guy described as catastrophic planetary failure. And the EPA guy said the CO2 equivalent would be having turned off the car 20 years ago. The anchorman asks the EPA official, he says, is this your personal position or the position of the administration? And the EPA official says there is no more a position on this climate change issue than there is a position on the boiling temperature of water. In other words, it's a fact. So we face a situation where potentially 20% of the landmass of the Earth is going to be lost to sea level rise. And this is 20%, this 20% landmass is where 50% of the people on Earth live. And the disruption, the economic, catastrophe, and the violence that's going to provoke as people in huge cities. I mean, there are 60 million people who live in Mumbai in India, which is built in a wetlands and will be, in a 3-foot sea level rise, completely lost. Where will those 60 million people go in India, which is a country that has 5 times the number of people the United States live in a landmass that's already just a third? This will provoke astonishing violence. What we are going to see in sea level rise in India, in China, in Africa, and in Atlantic South America is going to really, really blow your mind. And it will be bad in America as well, because Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Newark, Washington, D.C., Wilmington, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, the whole of the Florida coast, New Orleans, Houston, parts of Los Angeles, parts of San Francisco will all be lost. It will be unbelievable. So, the shocking thing to me is that there is absolutely no leadership on this circumstance or any of the issues that we face in climate change at all. Part of the reason for that is the wealthy are using this time period and their control over governments to make certain that they have control over as much of the resource base of the earth as they possibly can, and that they have as much money, under their control as they possibly can, so as to ensure that the walled communities that they live in, protected by armed guards, who, probably right now are being trained by the U.S., Navy or the U.S. Army. Security contractors will protect the wealthy in their walled communities, and the rest of us will be left to our own devices. There's absolutely no leadership. And that's, because the politicians are in bed with the business people, and they're also putting as much as they can in their own pockets, and really thinking not at all about the welfare of America. Or the culture of the earth is going to change profoundly. There is a coming culture, and the reason why I'm doing this blog, part of the reason, is that I would like to speak to the coming culture, the new culture, and speak to the issues that culture will face, even as we're talking about spirituality and about economics and politics. And, the thing is that we have a new culture coming, and that new culture, will have new foundations, and part of the new foundation, as far as I'm concerned, has to be a completely new approach to medicine and a completely new approach to religion. And I intend to discuss meditation and spirituality and the alternative possibilities that have proven themselves in the daily lives of the community that I live in, and provide, or suggest possibilities for communities emerging in this new culture that will come. A culture that will rise in response to, the extraordinary economic and resource distribution imbalances that have been created through the government by the wealthy, and the extraordinary challenges that climate change is confronting us with. I mean, make no mistake, the existence of human beings is under threat. It doesn't matter if human beings survive or not, but for those of us who are alive and those of us who have children and who have grandchildren, we would like to be able to suggest to them pathways that they might travel to find in their lives some level of peace and fulfillment. And so that's why I want to talk about, that's why this video blog, and that is why I want to address many of the issues that we will address in this forum.